moving on, video by Dr. K. Check out. How's it? Streamer culture is a time bomb. I think this was in reference to Shockgate, if you don't pay attention. No, this is actually in mainstream too. I think Vance had talked about it. Hassan Piker had shocked his dog, ostensibly. I'd actually done a video about that where I kind of defended Hassan a little bit. No, I'll go into it a little bit more. One and only time I'll defend Hassan because he's kind of a dingaling. Um, but I think in that scenario, like we have shock collars for our dogs, right? But with us, it's a sequential thing. Like it's an electrical fence where it does beeping, then vibration, and shock. And believe it or not, they learn pretty quickly. Dogs are pretty smart in that regard. So most of the time, they never get to the shock. The only time it would probably happen is if they're chasing something or something like that. 99% of the time, they never get to that. They'll turn back before they'd ever hits that stage of it. Point being, in that scenario, I don't think Hassan's dog was regularly yelping. So it occurs to me that he might have had a collar with which the dog was trained, where it was meant that the dog was trained with a sequential type of thing, where it would be like vibration, then shock. But you'd almost never have to use the shock. You just have to use the vibration because the dog associates the vibration with the shock. So he vibrates, place, Kaya, place, or whatever command he wants to give the dog, and the dog does what it does because, again, it associates the vibration with a shock. But this one time, it seems like maybe he either he might have hit the wrong button or something. Like to me, that seems to be the most likely explanation that he just hit the wrong button this time and shocked. But it feels like he's too much of a pompous ass really to ever say that. So yeah, I don't know. He kept changing the story as well. It was a whole thing somehow. It was weirdly, yeah, it was hilarious, honestly. Not for the dog, probably, but just in general, it was kind of a hilarious quagmire. Anyways,
Really starting to believe that the most dangerous thing on the planet is the
for the
psychological
for the record, that comes up in this video. I'm pretty sure.
dynamics that we see happening in Collargate. And you will think, oh my God,
Huh.
these people are ignoring the reality of the situation. They're ignoring the reality of the situation. They see a different reality. And this is the problem with the world today, is we are all living in our own realities.
It is the one thing that I like to generally assume that whatever a person is suggesting, however dumb it might sound, somehow in their head it makes sense. So if you can try to get inside that and recreate the way they're thinking on some level, you can make it make sense to yourself to some extent. And for the record, maybe that's not always a good thing. Like if you're trying to understand a psychopath or Hannibal Lecter or something, that can be some pretty traumatizing crap. But just generally speaking, I think it's good to try and understand where other people are coming from, even if they are wrong on some level.
There's no attempt at understanding. It's only about winning. So I think Collargate is a great example of a lot of very interesting psychological dynamics that are
I don't disagree. In fact, the whole online ecosystem, I find online drama like, for the record, like recently, I've just been kind of getting like tuning out of pretty much like most political debate and discourse and stuff like that. 'Cause I find it really stresses me out. But like online drama, it's just disconnected enough to where it's kind of like just looking at Hollywood or something like that. I guess that's what women do sometimes, and they're worried about who Taylor Swift is dating or married to, or whatever the latest scandal is. And this is kind of that for me. It's just kind of fun because it's almost like it's benign enough that you can laugh at it and not get super stressed out over it most of the time.
at play in the world today. And I'm going to talk about Collargate from the perspective
Put
of
it this
those.
way, like the stake. I don't know if benign is the right word. The stakes are low enough that you can just kind of enjoy it and have fun with it. So So I enjoy it and have fun with it.
Psychological dynamics, not the individuals involved or anything like that. It's not a
He likes Hassan Piker. No, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't think he actually comes out super in favor of Hassan Piker. He's trying to strive, or he's trying to get people to a more nuanced position or approach of things. So I don't think he necessarily likes Hassan Piker.
about like demonizing Hassan or defending Hassan or anything like that. It's not about the specifics of Collargate. It's about, don't you guys think it's weird that this one thing happened? And then for the last 2 weeks, this is the only thing that anyone on LSF is talking about. Like, what on earth is happening on the internet and in our lives where
This is symptomatic of my own ignorance, but I don't know exactly what LSF is. I'm assuming it's an acronym for something. It might be something to do with Reddit, but I should look that up at some point.
this is happening? That's what we're going to talk about. Some time ago, I don't know if you guys have been following, there's a creator named Hassan, and he had this video.
Okay, it's the same reason as to why America, Kaya, please just fucking go, just stop.
Right. So this,
And that's the weird thing, because I don't think the dog normally yelps. This was an abnormality. Right? And because it's an abnormality, that's kind of what makes me think that, yeah, he normally probably would just vibrate the dog. It doesn't make sense that this is the only time the dog really yelps. The dog, he probably was vibrating the dog pretty regularly to get it to do what allegedly. No, you see clips where the dog is just lying and then it gets up and moves to a different position or something, maybe when it reaches or something. So he was maybe trying to get it to move using the vibrate, but this seems to be the only time where it's actually like, "Meow." So it seems like it's more likely that he was just vibrating it the other times. Yeah.
is the clip that started Collargate. Hassan
Well,
streaming.
okay.
He gets frustrated with his dog, apparently touches a button.
I think my camera is covering his face when he's up here. Give me a second. I'll switch to the other side. All right. Sorry about that. We're back. I think we're back. Huh? All right. Sounds good.
His dog yelps and goes back to the bed or whatever. And the first thing that I want y'all to notice is that this has 78,000 upvotes. So, like, what on earth is going on here?
What if you could clean your retainer at the touch of a button? No more brushing or tablets. Over 4 years ago, our team of
So today,
Well, I think kind of what's going on there is that you think he goes into this a little bit, but Hassan is built up like a lot of bad will with his colorful takes on stuff sometimes. So I feel like this has been a long time coming. There's a lot of people that don't like him, and I feel like in his own community, he's kind of pushed his own community about as far as it could take sometimes with some of his ideas, and like how far he was willing to go with some of his ideas. So I feel like I don't know. This might be like the straw that broke the camel's back. Or
what I
something.
want to talk about, I want to talk about Collargate, not in the details. And let me just this is about understanding what is happening to us on the internet. And the reason that I want to talk about this, so generally speaking, we have this ethos here at Healthy Gamer that we talk to people, we don't talk about people. So this is not going to be about Hassan and whether he's guilty or whether he's
But I love Gus. No.
a narcissist or whether it's real. I'm not an investigative journalist. It's not my place to try to determine truth of something. What I want to focus on today is why this blows up and the way in which it blows up. Because, and this is what's kind of wild, I'm really starting to believe that the most dangerous thing on the planet is the psychological dynamics that we see happening in Collargate. And we're going to be talking about mentalization. We're going to be talking about online radicalization. And we're going to be talking about a host.
It is really interesting to see, like, it's one of those things where, like, the types of, like, groupings that you see online, like the mass group dynamics, is very strange because you get like so much, like it's like almost an unnatural level of human coagulate. Maybe they're like coagulation or something like that, where you get so many people in the same place at the same time, and that like the dynamics that arise from that is just extremely intriguing.
Of psychological things, including displacement, projection, etc. And I think Collargate is also a really good example of how people have stopped talking to each other. So if we look at the fundamental structure of Collargate, what is it? It's some clip gets shown.
I think he has a point there too, where like it feels like most people are getting their information from a source who got it from a source who got it from someone who might have seen the thing, or it feels like you're almost a couple of steps removed from anything that's like directly observed, like from any sort of witness testimony themselves, actually. So it feels like there can be a lot of garbled stuff.
Right? A lot of people make judgments based on the clip. This is a 37-second clip that causes this explosion. There's no context. There's unclear levels of critical thinking. And then what happens is everyone starts reacting to it, right? So we've got the original Hassan Gate and then Collargate. And then we've got clips like this one, right? So then we have people like analyzing this, like people like XQC.
Trained with that and of zapping. And which was, they moved away from the initial conversation, which was that like she didn't even have.
This guy is, I don't know if you've ever heard him talk, but he's like the most bizarre, I don't know, jargon ever. Like he mutilates the English language. I think he's French Canadian or something. He's popular, but man, oh man. Give me a second. I'll be back. There's the thumbnail. There's the thumbnail. I should be nicer about that, but I think it's still it's kind of funny trying to find unfortunately timed thumbnails.
With that collar on to begin with.
Then what the fuck is it wearing then?
Sorry.
Okay, then I got ideas with you. The only way to get out of this new lie, which is honestly already disproven, find this collar then in the room. You're gonna have to show.
Right. So there's all this business about the collar. Oh yeah, and then there's like clips like this one, okay?
Out of it.
Where then people.
I'll probably cut that out. But yeah, he said the F-bomb to whom it may concern. Of the VOD, anyways.
People are like defending Hassan.
Like it's only a vibrate. Like there's a setting for vibrate and there's a setting for shock. No, there's no shock. Like the electric prongs are taken out of it.
But here's my thing, right?
Like it's only a vibrate. Like there's a setting for vibrate and there's a setting for shock.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
So there's only since the prongs are in it, it'll only vibrate.
Right. So whether there a collar.
Why is she? I don't know why she. I'd heard this clip before. I didn't realize she was just holding up a piece of paper for some reason.
Or is there a collar? Are the prongs removed? Are they not removed? So there's like a lot of people like talking across each other. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because this is not the only place this is happening. If we look at the world we live in, the amount of people talking across each other is increasing exponentially. And I'm really starting to believe that that is one of the core reasons why we are seeing so much strife and conflict in the world. So if you look at like politics, we don't have place.
I've heard this remarked on before as well, and I think it's a huge part of this, like too, that news, YouTube, online discourse in general is catered to the notion of like clippability, where people want what they say to be as clippable and as like going potentially viral as possible. So like the way they talk, the way they structure what they say, how controversial or divisive it is, can oftentimes be catered towards that, where they almost maybe don't want what they say to be just like mundanely persuasive. They need it to be clippable, right? They can't just persuade they can't just talk like they maybe just can't talk normally to people, because that would be unremarkable, even if it would be far more useful. If that makes sense.
Is where people sit down and actually have a conversation. Even in
again, this thing like nobody wants to just watch people sitting down and having conversations. You need that pizzazz. You need that whatever to make it interesting for people, to make it entertaining. Like, and maybe that's the key word there, entertainment. It's catered towards entertainment. It's catered towards the sensational. It's catered towards a lot of things that are not necessarily conducive to just normal, healthy discourse, which makes it very unhealthy in my mind.
Politics, we have these debates where it's like you get 3 minutes with a 90-second rebuttal and 3 minutes with a 90-second rebuttal. We have all kinds of people who are no longer talking to each other, right? They're talking to their base. I'm talking to my base over here. You're talking to your base over there. And we're just talking across each other. And so it's
probably an element of it too. But I don't think he's wrong.
It's sort of like there's no direct like dialogue. And so we've got like, you can look at things like Gaza and stuff like that. I'm not an expert in it by any means, and maybe it's a can of worms just to even mention.
How dare you not comment on
it? But like, I think one of the things that
sorry, it's by no means a laughing matter. I'm just saying, like, it feels like everyone who just that really has nothing. I don't know. It feels like whatever you're gonna do generally, you have to be good at it. And a lot of people who maybe just shouldn't get involved in politics in general are feeling compelled to speak on the matter. Well, of Gaza, of Ukraine and Russia, just of politics in general. It's like, really, you don't like, do what you're good at, do what you enjoy, diversity of interest, diversity of effort, and all that jazz.
Also saw with like this whole Ethan Klein Hassan thing, right? Is like they fucking make videos about each other. I don't know if they just don't sit down and have a conversation. Maybe they did.
Dr. K, he was astonished.
And we'll talk about
for the record. I don't think he drops them that often, but
ignorance in a second. So I'm really ignorant. There's another huge problem. No one says I don't know anymore, right? Like no one's like, I'm not sure what happened. So when we see clips on the internet, these clips activate our emotions. And when our emotions get activated, whatever thoughts.
Logical thinking goes out the window. No. Yeah, here's the thing. Actually, I do want to actually comment on. It sounds like he's about to say something extremely Indian here for the record. But there's a thing about emotions that I do want to comment on. That it feels like people say that like almost emotional arguments aren't valid somehow, which I don't think is necessarily true. But I do think that emotions are things that they're best, like emotional arguments are best served as like a side dish to something else. Like we are emotional beings. But it's best to couple emotional arguments with something like a logical argument or a moral argument or something that's maybe more reliable and less flighty as a part of the human experience than just emotions, because emotions they tend to be kind of fickle, right?
Get produced by our brain, we believe are true, right? So I want to show y'all something because this is actually super scary. So then we've got these kind of memes of like Hassan being fucking Raiden and like shocking Ludwig, and Hassan, this is Cutie holding this, but there's one of like, you know, Hassan like having Ludwig on a leash and things like that. So I want y'all to think for a moment, and I'm curious what y'all think. When you see a meme like this, what do you think happens in your brain? What do you think is the effect of this in your brain from a neuroscience standpoint? Okay, this is not like, do you guys like it or not?
I mean, I guess, like, generally speaking, the notion of humor in this regard would be like to get one not to say take the individual or the situation seriously, I guess. In this case, Ludwig and or Hassan, you would tend not to maybe take them as seriously, or I think it would maybe be along the lines of trying to discredit, like it discredits them in your mind as credible people or sources of information, maybe.
This is like what is happening in your brain. Okay, so this is what's really scary, right? Everyone's like, lol, fair enough. Well, I enjoy a good meme. Here's the crazy thing. When you get emotionally engaged with something, either you start to believe it more or you believe it less. There's no in between. So like when people see these kinds of memes, it literally shapes your thinking. Hey y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we share to actually create change in your life, check out Dr. K's Guide to Mental Health. And so we start by understanding what literally is meditation. How does experience shape us as human beings? How do we strengthen the mind itself as an organ? And so by understanding our mind, we understand a very, very simple tool, a crucial tool that we have to learn how to use if we want to build the life that we want to. So check out the link in the bio and start your journey today. There's just a ton of science behind this, that the more emotional we get, it doesn't matter what kind of emotion. Like imagine for a moment that I'm like, hi, my name is blah, 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 and I swear I didn't do anything and I'm innocent. And then if you listen to that person, right? Like you're like, oh yeah, I don't know if I believe that person. A really great example of this is like Johnny Depp in his Amber Heard trial. If you guys watch clips of Johnny Depp, you know, he's like hilarious on the stand. And if you think about the psychological,
it does feel like that would very much bias the judgment in favor of or against, like the nature. It's stupid that it's such a style over substance type of thing. Like logically, you would know that, but you can't help but like the messenger does affect the message to a very large degree.
impact that has on your brain. If someone is funny and entertaining, you are.
There was one thing I would love, honestly. This guy does some like reviews of goodness characters, like kind of psychological analysis of characters in shows. I thought it would be hilarious sometime if he studied the characters of like Always Sunny in Havana. Like I watched that a little bit, and the characters in that are like the most interestingly twisted individuals in my mind. And I think it's just because like the people who make it are obviously they're writing the characters that way. But man, it is there's some crazy people. Like I feel like that would be a very interesting like character diagnosis if you want to ever take that up. So Dr. K, if you're watching this, Always Sunny in Philadelphia, man, check it out.
more likely to believe that.
Diagnose those creeps.
That's like a fact, yo. Like a fact. So more likely to that has on your brain on the stand. And if you think about the psychological impact that has on your brain, if someone is funny and entertaining, you are more likely to believe them. That's like a fact, yo. Like a fact.
There would probably be an element that certain mental states would be more open or would exercise different standards of evidence almost. And I was actually going to talk about this earlier. Like, there would have been a time in my life where I would have thought you should have one standard of evidence for everything. And I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that anymore. I don't think it's particularly incongruous that we have different standards of evidence for different scenarios. Obviously, on a scientific level, the accuracy required, you better have a really high standard of evidence, so as to attain a very high standard of accuracy, right? In court cases, given that you're dealing with very permanent consequences, high standard of evidence. But if there's a person who is my friend and who's proven themselves to be reliable on multiple occasions, you tend to just trust them to a very high degree, and if they say it, that's pretty much good enough, right? And I don't think that's necessarily incongruous or bad to have that. If there's a person who lies to you reliably and they're a pathological liar, you might even, with regards to them, say to you, I like whatever you say, I don't know if I can believe any of it, no matter what you bring. I'm gonna have to independently verify this, like something completely independent of you, because you are who you are. And you certainly, I don't think the notion of I don't think you should be arbitrary or hypocritical about the way you apply a standard of evidence, or how you choose your standard of evidence, but also I don't think it's necessarily wrong to have different standards of evidence for different scenarios and different people, if that makes sense. Anyways,
So I think we do not realize that when we watch things like this actually shapes our thinking, whether you realize it or not. And this is what's really insane. So I'm going to ask y'all a question that's really hard to answer, which is, when you believe something about Collargate, what is that based on, right? And we think it's based on evidence, but there's a really, really good chance that it's based on emotion. And I'm not saying
I think a lot of people, like it mentions before, I feel like Hassan has built up a lot of bad will over the years with his colorful political takes. So I feel like a lot of people are seeing kind of a pattern of conduct and whatnot, and are saying, "Mm, yeah, he would totally do this thing." So I feel like that it's kind of the end point of an extrapolation, if you will, for a lot of people. Like they're saying like, oh, he did this and he talks about people this way and he laughs at such and such. So yeah, he would totally do that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I feel like that's kind of where most people's brains are going.
that there isn't evidence that is supportive or not supportive. We'll kind of get to that in a second. Okay. But like, I want y'all to really, really understand this, that the thoughts that your mind produces are not like super logical necessarily. Like, you have to work really hard to have like a logical thought.
Probably true. Self-awareness isn't like I think I mentioned this before. I don't think self-awareness is necessarily something that comes supernaturally to us.
And this is what we see on the internet. We know there are tons of studies on online radicalization. The more time you spend in a particular bubble, the more your thoughts will be shaped in that bubble. I've had patients, it's fucking terrifying. So I had one friend of mine, not a patient, whose wife started going down this like Instagram girl power, like toxic femininity, like misandry, like rabbit hole, and then like their marriage completely fell apart. I've also had friends whose
Good to know. He goes into the other end of this, but it's good to know it kind of goes both ways. It's nice when people punch both ways, or equal opportunity offenders. So he comes at this from a pretty fair and balanced standpoint in my mind. Not to glaze him too much.
patients, usually actually not friends, whose like husbands or boyfriends will start to go down the toxic manosphere rabbit hole. So as we talk across each other, as we stay in our insular communities, as there's a lack of dialogue, we're seeing in the political space where, like, you know, here in the United States, like, people don't answer questions anymore. This has been going on for a long time. I know everyone loves to shit on Trump about how he's doing this and he's doing this. Like, we stopped answering questions. Politicians stopped answering questions in the United States a very long time ago, right? So we don't talk to each other. And as we don't talk to each other, as we don't
I was just thinking, there's this one episode of the Community where there's like a debate thing, and who was the Jeff just plays like every kind of like crowd manipulation trope up to the hilt. It's hilarious. It's worth a watch sometime. Yeah, there was some sort of episode where him and Annie were going up to they're going up against each other to try and figure out who was going to be, I don't know, chairman or something of the college. And yeah, it was a hilarious episode. It does feel like it's almost like indicative of, or like a microcosm of the political landscape these days.
Really sit and listen to each other. As we consume this online content, we get radicalized into two areas. Then we get to the stands and the aggressors.
In the Win with Zen sweepstakes, you can get a chance to win
look at it.
$100,000. But there's more than one way to win with Zen. Here's how it works. For 5 weeks until November 24th.
Now we're going to talk about mentalization. Okay, so this is going to be really challenging. Okay, it's going to be so fucking simple, but it's going to be really challenging. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I make this video, at the end of this video, there's a really, really, really good chance, actually not even at the end, already there's a good chance that if you're a pro-Hassan person, you dislike what I'm saying. If you're an anti-Hassan person, you dislike what I'm saying. By the end of this video, there's a
I dislike Hassan, but I don't necessarily disagree with what he's saying. I think he is actually right. Watch out for the notepads. Sorry, I was just
really, really good chance that people on both sides of the conflict will really, really dislike me. Okay? And we're going to understand why right here and right now. Let's say you're Hassan. And let's say for a moment that you are not abusive to your dog. Let's just assume this for a moment. Okay? So Hassan loves Kaya, which is not...
I was just thinking, is there any like examples of him like patently abusing his dogs? There's two clips that were floating around. One of them was where he was sticking a dog into a kennel with another dog to kind of have them fight, which, you know, I don't think anything was ever going to really happen. It's kind of, you know, it's a dog kind of kerfuffle, if you will. But a lot of people saw that and they were like, yeah, this guy's bad. He's pitting his dogs against one another, whatever. So there was that one. And then there was another one that's maybe a little bit more serious where he literally just pulled the tail of a dog, which is technically something you're not supposed to do. So there could be like two scenarios where, like, independently of any other point on the graph, like those two scenarios would get people to believe that, yeah, Hassan would absolutely shock his dog.
Mutually exclusive with abuse, by the way, which we can talk about if y'all want to, but is kind, does not use shock collar. Let's just assume for a moment. Now, the first thing that I want y'all to do is notice your reaction to this. So here's what I've learned. Here at Healthy Gamer, we've worked with over 500 creators. I'm a creator myself. And one of the craziest things that we encounter time and time and time again is, like, once the internet starts to believe something, first of all, how little information they have, right? And let's understand, like, why this happens. So a week ago, if I upload a clip of Hassan being nice to his dog, what do y'all think happens to that clip? This gets fucking downvoted through the roof, okay? Now let's understand why. So what does the internet love more than anything else? This is a separate point. The first thing that the internet loves is a delta, is a change. So why is Collargate such a big deal? It's because Hassan is not known as an animal abuser, right? So Hassan's, like, platform is about minorities. It's about supporting the people who are, like, you know, he's like a leftist, like, so he's like, you know, people, we got to, like, look out for the underdogs and we got to take...
Asterisk, for the record, he's a bit interesting in his application of those principles, for the record.
Take care of everybody, and, like, the people in power are the bad guys. I may be misrepresenting it. I apologize if I am. I'm trying to just summarize and move on because I'm not...
Ostensibly, he's correct, but maybe not always in practice.
So interested in the platform. But what the internet loves more than anything else is a delta. So anytime you have someone who's perceived as good, who does something bad, the internet is going to love it. And anytime you have someone who's bad, who does something good, the internet is going to pay attention, right? And that's just the way that our brain works. We like novelty, and any kind of change is important. So I'm going to show y'all a paper real quick. The effective adaptation on differential brightness discrimination. This paper is great. It's from 1938, y'all. Journal of Physiology, like back when there was just a Journal of Physiology. Not like cardiac physiology, not like kidney physiology, like Basically, this paper talks about how human beings are more sensitive to changes. So like basically this paper is looking at the eye, okay? And it's basically says like, look, when the eye is used to seeing darkness and it sees light, it like notices a lot more. So there's this really interesting principle in human beings where like basically if there's some kind of change, that's something we're really sensitive to. So if I'm in a relationship with someone and they suddenly stop responding to my texts, I'm going to be hypersensitive to that. If like there's a very, very loud room where like everyone's like laughing and like hanging out and whatever, and suddenly things go silent, I'm very sensitive to that. So human beings, our brains are wired to be sensitive to change. Okay. But let's get back to this other Hassan thing. So here's
it kind of makes sense if you think of it. Like the notion is that the status quo is the status quo for a reason. It's the status quo because it's safe and stable. So the thing that intrudes itself against the status quo, the established norm, is quite often it's new and it's potentially perhaps dangerous.
the sequence. Okay. So let's assume for a moment that Hassan does not use a shock collar. He uses a vibrating collar, that he loves his dog, okay? That he treats his dog well. Let's assume that this is true. Now, he says his story is it's not a shock collar, it's a vibrating collar, it's part of her training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what happens is that there's two groups, one that believes this and one that disbelieves this. Now, once you form a judgment, this is the really scary thing. So then everyone gets upset about this clip and people form opinions. And then what happens, there's this clip. Now we're in an interesting...
I was just thinking that is at that point that the pitchforks and torches come out.
Situation, because if you're close to Hassan and you know the guy...
This is like a completely armchair coaching, but it feels like if I were in a situation like that, like generally speaking, I guess I don't know, maybe like if it was something really bad, I would come out and say something. But it feels like, in general speaking, like the worst thing you could do is turn yourself over to the tender mercies of an online mob. The best thing you could do is just say, do you want, okay, if I did something wrong, I'm going to wait for the subpoena. I'm going to wait for the court case. If I did something actually wrong, I'll wait for that. Otherwise, believe whatever you want to believe. Well, maybe not believe whatever you want to believe. Like, give at least some sort of basic defense, but don't worry about it as much as Hassan's worrying about it. Don't feed the don't feed the flames.
And that, like, this is true, right? Like, I've seen Hassan. I'm not just basing things on a 37-second clip from the internet. I've known this guy for years. He's a friend of mine. I see the way that he treats Kaya. People like Ray showed up and they're like, this is the most loved dog in the world, right? And so they're saying things like this. So then what?
Valkyrie, for the layman, for the uninitiated. She's a streamer as well, I think.
Happens is like his friends, right? Like,
she is a streamer as well. I shouldn't be so uncertain about that. And I think she came out in favor of Hassan.
People like defend him. And it's not even clear. Like, I don't think that they're necessarily like defending him. I think they're just saying, hey, people on the internet who watched a 37-second clip, we know this guy. We've spent hours, days with him and him.
I'm not saying they're like, no, I do think they're somewhat, it's a naive take to espouse that, oh, he's nice to me, and consequently, like, if you're an important person and someone is nice to you, like, what exactly is the surprise there? If they think they can get something from you, why would they act otherwise? I'm pretty sure, Hitler probably never met a Jew that wasn't nice to him, but he's also Hitler. He's the dictator of Germany. So yes, every Jew is going to be nice to him regardless of what he's doing to them. Right? So with these streamers who know Hassan, they're in a relationship where Hassan can very much gain clout and he has a lot to lose by mistreating them. So yes, he's going to behave a certain way in front of them. He's going to behave a certain way towards them, and he's going to behave a certain way around them. Like, it's not that shocking. And maybe this is a degree of like not knowing their own significance. But yes, everyone treats important people nicely. Well, most of the time anyways, unless they're, belligerent or something. Again, it's not that shocking that Hassan would treat them well, and that maybe they would get this idea of Hassan. But like, I feel like again, it's a very naive thing to believe because he treats a very never mind. Enough said.
His dogs, he is not like this. This is a poor representation.
So there I was, scrolling eBay.
When I saw this.
Still in the box. It's like the exact same one my mom wore.
You can feel the...
Now, here's the really important thing. So when a human being does something, there are reasons they do something. There are psychological drivers. There are emotional drivers that lead to the behavior. So mentalization is the process of understanding when a human being does something, what are the psychological drivers that are actually driving them? And then even within ourselves, when I do this thing, why do I do this thing, right? What is psychologically driving me to engage in this behavior? This is something that we become so fucking decrepit at. Like, we suck at this. And I'll give you all an illustrative example, okay? So let's say I'm someone who has a very high level of insecurity. I'm somewhat narcissistic, and I'm getting married. And then my BFF, who I haven't seen in 2 years, shows up a month before the wedding for her bridesmaid fitting.
But I do think he is right on. Like I mentioned before in this video, I do think he is right that. You know what? I just lost it.
And I've noticed, oh crap, she has lost so much weight and she looks so great. And in the meantime, I've been in a steady relationship for the last 5 years. I've let myself go a little bit. A few years ago when we were in college, she used to be a little bit overweight and I was like a regular weight. And now she's really kind of gotten her shit together. And like, I've kind of let myself go and then I feel bad, right? Our positions have reversed. And so if I'm not careful, what I will do is I'll say, oh my God, she lost weight to make me look bad. And then I start coming up with all of these excuses for her to no longer be a bridesmaid. But if I do not have insight.
I do think humans are extraordinarily good at rationalizing getting the thing they want, generally speaking.
Into these driving factors, like it doesn't make sense, right? So, and this is where there's a failure of mentalization, because this person in this situation, I don't think for a moment about why would this person lose weight. I don't consider that they have all kinds of reasons outside of what my mind automatically produces, that there are actions and then there are reasons for those actions. But my mind produces some hypothesis like, oh, she's trying to make me look bad, which, by the way, is
She's definitely trying to make you look bad.
Emotional, remember that, right? But there are all kinds of reasons why people could be doing this. And what I see in Collargate is a whole-scale failure of mentalization, okay? And we're going to explain that. I'm going to walk y'all.
Well, it's something that is just interesting to even just... It's something that's a good thing to get into the habit of doing. For a second, just indulge the notion that maybe your opponent isn't as terrible as you think they are, and just try to come up with some ideas. Like, I think it would be a good mental exercise for people to get into. Just come up with a couple of reasons why a person might do what they do. Because like I had mentioned this before, I tend to think that whatever a person does, whatever they're thinking, somehow it makes sense in their own minds. To them, somehow it makes sense. To them, somehow it's not stupid. So if you can try to recreate that on some level, to extrapolate or to recreate the way they're thinking on some level to the point where what they're doing makes sense, I think it can be a really healthy exercise sometimes. And again, like, you can be too empathetic towards people who are literally schizo in some way, or they're some criminally insane or something. But there's maybe a happy medium where you can try to understand people but not commiserate too much with them. Right. Wise as serpents, harmless as doves, or whatever the old saying is. Anyways, yeah, that's this video. Check it out. Drops the F-bomb a couple of times. Yeah, streaming culture is a time bomb. Yeah, check it out if you want to. By Dr. K.